What's your favorite Sherlock Holmes adaptation? This one's like steampunk Batman with better banter. The mystery, it's fine, but the vibes are immaculate. It's day 85 of 365, today's film, Sherlock Holmes. We're wrapping up 2009 with a banger. This is Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes, starring Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law. I was beyond myself excited for this one when it came out because I was one of those kids that had a Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels poster hanging up in my room where other people normally would have kept their Pulp Fiction poster. This is one of those characters that I think is infinitely adaptable. You can do comedy, you can do straight and serious, you can do period pieces. I even grew up on a TV show called Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century, so you can put him in the far distant future and he still works as a character. Any of the issues I heard at the time about this being a bad adaptation just went right past me because it's kind of like Batman. You can do any version of him and probably have 3 different versions in theaters across a year and they'll all still make money. You can call it a biased, and that's okay because I am biased not only to our director, but to our lead actor as well. I love Robert Downey Jr., and the portrayal here is just so different and so fun that it works. And revisiting it as an adult, I can't complain. Hans Zimmer score still goes really fucking hard. This interpretation of the character is so charismatic and pops on the big screen in a way that we just don't often see. Ritchie's visual style is alive, thriving, and exotic, and honestly, there's so much here for me to love that it was kind of hard for me to find just 3 things that I love about Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes. The first thing that I really love about this movie, and it's something that you will not ever hear defended from this period, is the use of slow-mo. Now, in case I need to remind you, back in 2009, we had just invented the Phantom camera, and shooting at high frame rates was just kind of the new cool technology to use in Hollywood. People were using this to different effects at the time. There were even whole YouTube channels built around this technology. And the 2 people that used it the most egregiously were Zack Snyder and Guy Ritchie. I think this is an important distinction to make because not only is this the UK versus the US when it comes to filmmaking, but the practicality of using each one is also called into question. Zack Snyder thinks that his slow-mo is cool. Guy Ritchie knows that his slow-mo is cool, and that's the real difference. They're both aiming to make machismo, masculinity movies, but Guy Ritchie's study of masculinity through a UK lens is brought to light through things like suits and how you address the public, whereas Zack Snyder's version is all about the internal egoism, showing off muscles and the movement of the human body. Now, the one's exactly wrong, but when you get deeper into the meanings behind each one as you use them, I think Zack Snyder's ends up being way more toxic than the Guy Ritchie version. If you need more evidence, when we get into their more modern films, Guy Ritchie has spread into not only more diverse cast, but into highlighting other sexualities within his films, something that Zack Snyder has totally shied away from because he's not studying that in his real life. So I'll defend the slow motion in this movie even if no one else will. Not only does it look awesome, but it also harkens back to the Jackie Chan era of showing the same action over and over because it looks cool. What's the point of having a stunt team doing all these cool stunts if you're not going to make full use of it? Zack Snyder's gonna slow it down just so that he can make it look cool for a second but never repeat it. Guy Ritchie says, no, you get to watch this twice, once in slow-mo and once in fast, and that's cool. That's a cool way to introduce it. And not only that, to give us a line into Sherlock Holmes's own brain for how fast he's thinking, the world moves slowly around him. Now we actually have a plot device for this to make sense versus a Snyder film where the slow-mo is just for the use of ogling a male body, but definitely not in a gay way. The second thing that I love so much about Sherlock Holmes is this is basically a superhero adaptation of the character, which for that to happen in 2009 is pretty crazy. Iron Man had just come out the year before, so the MCU doesn't really exist as a thing. RDJ was a proven thing by his performance, but we didn't know he was going to carry us all the way to Endgame at that point. Continuing the superhero thing into what is essentially a Batman period piece, Gotham by Gaslight, through way of Sherlock Holmes, was such an inventive move at the time. People would say, why hasn't Guy Ritchie made a superhero movie? I argue he did, twice, with his version of Sherlock Holmes, because that's what Guy Ritchie would do. There aren't many suit-wearing superheroes for him to adapt in a way that would really fit his style. And again, he's not a Zack Snyder type that's gonna dress someone in a bunch of spandex to get this kind of story told. I really love that instead he goes, no, let's just Batmanify Sherlock Holmes a little bit, make him good at fighting, make it all about the mystery, and just run with it from there. That's really inventive, especially for 2009. And looking back with the post-Endgame eyes, as we're looking down Avengers Doomsday, it's kind of crazy to me to think, wow, he actually thought about that way before this was a profitable idea. It makes the film feel riskier than it did at the time, because having watched it, it was always gonna work. But now it's like, wow, that was such foresight, and I really, really dig that. The third thing that I love about Sherlock Holmes is fuck the canon. This is something that I've learned to really appreciate, especially through this like superhero era of the late aughts into the 2010s. The canon exists to be broken, not to be adhered to. And especially in the case of Sherlock Holmes, where we don't have any living fans from the original series when the canon would have been important. Yeah, absolutely, get rid of it, throw it out. I would like to remind viewers that maybe haven't read a lot of Sherlock Holmes that there are entire Sherlock Holmes novels that take a break from Sherlock Holmes to tell Western stories instead, because even the author himself was sick of writing Sherlock Holmes. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle would have loved to see a reinterpretation of his material to this degree. And if you don't like this one, there's a million others for you. Another superhero from the MCU comes in to play Sherlock on the BBC not long after this movie comes out. They ran simultaneously at certain points, and this, I think, just adds to my point that we can always have more than one Sherlock. It can always be adapted in many different ways, and allowing for there to be a high-action, borderline fantasy superhero version of the character just shows how versatile it can be. Now that it's happened, we can do another interpretation. I'm not saying Will Ferrell's comedy version was that much better. Spoilers, it was kind of bad. But I like that they at least attempted, and we've kept it outside of the exact perfect canon every time. The characters that we know are here. All the familiarity exists, but it's through a lens of how the creator wants to display, through the team that Guy Ritchie had worked with all the way up to this point, now getting to take on material that they enjoyed since they were kids. I really appreciate that. And especially on my recent rewatch, I was just kind of blown away with how different this one ended up feeling. But what do you think? Are you a fan of the Guy Ritchie series? Am I just blowing too much smoke up its ass because I'm a biased fan? However you feel, our next one is going to be starting 2010 off with a big one. We're talking about James Cameron's Avatar. And as always, I'll see you tomorrow.